What's up guys, Old Painless here, and today we are looking at a new product from Cloud9, which is a third-party company, and they are bringing us their first figure named Quakeblast W-01. Basically, it's a Masterpiece-inspired Shockwave. Now, Quakeblast may sound familiar. It's pretty close to Quakewave from a competing company named Fans Toys, and there is some controversy regarding that. Which we'll probably touch on a little bit later in the review here. I don't own a Quakewave, so I can't really do a lot of sort of hands-on comparisons. But just from looking at pictures and video reviews and stuff, you can make some pretty fairly educated guesses, I'd say. But I don't want to really touch on that aspect too much. Instead, I really want to showcase this figure and see if he's worth your time and money. With that being said, let's take a look at the packaging and then the accessories that come along with him, and then we'll dig into the figure and see how well or not he shapes up to be a Masterpiece Shockwave. So the packaging is pretty phenomenal. Honestly, this is probably one of the nicest boxes I've seen from any third-party company or official. It's gorgeous. A really nice illustrated rendition of Quakeblast in the front. Very much looks like he's like a pharaoh in a sarcophagus, with his arms crossed up. Just a really neat look. You don't see many box arts attempt this kind of presentation here. And then we do get the Cloud9 logo and stuff on the side. The back we do get the standard character shots, alt mode and robot mode. And you even get a Velcro door here, so you can open up the package, see a nice line art rendition of the figure on the left, and then obviously, if he's shipped inside, then you'd see the figure on the right. The accessories are pretty limited, but we do get an additional sort of front nozzle here for the alt mode, which is painted pretty nice. Nice silver paint with clear purple plastic mixed inside there. It's sculpted really well too. This gets you a more G1 accurate look for the gun mode. We do get a replacement hand. The figure itself ships with a purple clear plastic version, but they do get you an actual solid piece here in case you don't like that clear plastic look. So not too bad. It's definitely a nice little option in case you want to swap some stuff around. You get two different tubings. I have the longer of the two already installed, but this gets you the option in case you want to swap it for the shorter tube for the alt mode, which looks a little bit nicer. I probably won't be using this though. And then lastly, just the standard instruction guide. Pretty straightforward. This is pretty simplistic, honestly. Nothing too extravagant here, but just all done on one page. They show you the accessories towards the bottom, and they even give you the battery type to purchase in case you want to actually do the light up features of the figure. But just one-sided, pretty simple. So with the accessories and packaging out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at Quakeblast here. And right off the bat, this is a really impressive piece. The terms KO has been kind of tossed around quite a bit. You typically associate, knockoff with lower quality. This does not have that kind of feel whatsoever. This feels like a premium figure. The plastic is superb. There's zero stress marks on this except for this clear plastic hand, which we'll touch on in a little bit. Plenty of die cast throughout the lower legs, the feet, and the outer portions here as well. And he just feels robust and solid in hand. To call this a knockoff just in terms of look and feel would be a gross mislabeling of the product. This feels like a really high caliber figure right here. And just taking a look at some of the detailing, really nice paneling throughout the entirety of the figure, nice subtle Masterpiece-esque sculpting and subtle detailing. The paint is gorgeous. It has like a nice sort of metallic sheen through the entire figure. It looks fantastic. Honestly, this might be one of the best painted figures I've seen here. I really like it. Even the silver down here is super clean and super sharp looking. And just taking a closer look at the head sculpt, pretty simplistic in terms of a design here, but we're dealing with Shockwave, so there's not much to it really. You get the single little eye bit right there, and these little ear wings, I guess, but pretty clean. And there is a light up gimmick. You know, as simple as the head sculpt is, I think that eye gimmick actually looks really nice. It's pretty impressive, actually, in person. And the head's on a ball joint, so you do get a full 360 swivel. You get some up and down motion as well. Not much in terms of a left and right sort of shake, but works well enough. The shoulders are on, I believe, die-cast hinges, ratcheted hinges here. So you do get some nice universals built in. There is another point of articulation here as well. And then you also do get the arm rotations for the full 360 here. We also get the upper bicep swivel, and then we do get a pretty solid elbow joint, single jointed I believe. Gets you a little bit more than 90 degrees, but works pretty well. And then we also do get a light up gimmick for the gun here, which is pretty cool. Doesn't really show off too well in this bright light. That's a little bit better, I guess. Very hard to access, actually. The button is really flush to the inner forearm, and you really can't push it in with your fingernail, so you have to end up using a little screwdriver or thumbtack or something to push that in. But I think that looks pretty good. And the last gimmick you can do for the light up feature, there's a button inside the chest, which you can turn on, and you get that nice backlit clear plastic chest, which looks pretty cool. I'm not normally one for light-up gimmicks on figures. You know, I've done the battery installs for, like, the Dinobot, like, swords and guns and stuff like that. But this one actually looks pretty good in all three spots, too. So I'm a big fan. Taking a look at his other hand, it is on a swivel here, so you get plenty of movement there. The fingers are all individually articulated, all done via ball joints at the base, including the thumb. The thumb is really loose. This is something I probably need to add some feature polish onto to stiffen up that joint, because it's very, very loose. There is an additional joint, though, on the tip of the thumb right there, which is nice. And then each finger can basically spread out at the base, and there's additional point of articulation halfway down the finger itself. So plenty of options for, you know, posing, getting a dynamic pose for a hand if you want to. That ball joint for the thumb does scare me, though. And the plastic itself, it may not show up too well, but I think there are some small stress fractures along the ball joint and knuckle areas. It's really hard to tell, but some of that plastic in there does look a little bit stressed. Generally, clear plastic has a tendency to be a little bit more fragile, so I don't see myself really posing this hand too often. Because of that, I'm not too worried about it, but just something to be aware of more than anything. Then we do get a ratcheted waist. We also get hip skirts that lift up on the sides. A little bit longer than what we saw in Quake Wave. It may or may not be an eyesore for you. Doesn't really bother me. The hips are on nice ratchets. They get you a pretty good range of motion. Upper thigh swivel, ratcheted knees for a 90-degree bend. And then you can also actually untab the foot here, so you do get an ankle rocker, as well as a slight forward and backward pivot. Not too much in that regard, but you do get a fair amount of motion on the toe itself and the heel. So good range of motion all around. I mean, all the articulation that you're looking for is present on this figure. If you notice too, there's also a hole here in the front of the forearm, so you do have the option to plug in this hose connection to the back or the front, but completely optional. I'm a big fan of how this looks, though, from the back of the arm to the backpack itself. But yeah, overall, this is a pretty slick looking figure. Feels fantastic. Great plastic, great weight to it. You know, well used die cast. The joints feel robust and, you know, buttery smooth with ratchets. And the paint is superb, and the use of clear plastic is really nice too. Again, really the only thing I dislike is just the hand itself. And just to get an idea for scale, here is Quake Blast with Megatron or Polyon, the two Fans Toys Insecticons, and just for an official, we have Hasbro Masterpiece Starscream. So with that being said, let's get this guy transformed into his all mode. We'll show off some of the accessories attached to him, and we'll see if his gun mode actually lives up to that Masterpiece name as well. Pull off the backpack. flip that down. Raise the arms so you can access the side latches to open that up, and that will allow you to plop down the chest. Fold in the head and re-secure the chest pieces there. The hand is the usual tuck and fold in job here, so make sure your fingers are nice and tight, and rotate the fist inwards, back of the hand facing out. Extend the arms up, rotating at the shoulder joint, and you want this curved angle facing outwards. Compress the arms together and peg together. Carefully slide this plastic towards the middle. Next, we'll just fold in the feet. Heel first, toe second. Next, we want to handle these rear portions, so we unpeg them, fold out, and this white plastic is on a bit of a hinge here, where you have to kind of slide it back up and then down like that, and then this panel will basically ratchet down and then peg into place on the interior of the lower leg. Untab these outer leg portions, fold them up, extending them out, and then you need to get this portion fully extended like that, so it's now straight back. While we have access, you can also pull out this portion, which includes the trigger right there as well. Rotate the leg at the upper thigh joint, and then collapse the legs downwards, like so. You can then peg together everything here, including the handles, and the last step here is just to take this portion, peg these pegs into those holes there. They don't really snap into place, but they are held in by friction, and you can lower down the trigger right there. Fold this up and back, and that's our aiming sight for the gun. Compress the torso down, and this backpack we just untab, invert this piece of plastic, extend, and then this plastic will tab in to the interior. Basically, we're going to line these tabs up here on both sides to these tab holes here on the tip of the gun. So once you have that secure, you fold this around and then realign those joints there. And here we have Quake Blast in his alt mode, and he looks pretty good. I mean, that's a big, beefy Shockwave right there. I mean, it very much looks like how Shockwave was represented in, the comics and the cartoon and whatnot. As you can see, the tubing here does go from the bottom to the top. Now, this really isn't the ideal setup here with this tubing. Ideally, what you do is replace this piece with the shorter version, and you'd run it from the top to this portion right here for the more traditional look. Now, this has been an issue for some people. The wire or the cabling doesn't really secure very well, but there's a trick to actually putting these in securely on the actual figure. Just grab a pair of needle nose pliers and pinch down on the tip on the ends here, and basically after you have it pinched in, pop it back into the hole, and this plastic is pretty malleable. It's really flexible, and I thought initially I had damaged the tip of the cable itself, but it actually expanded and refilled the hole, so it's a really firm connection on the actual figure. I'm not too keen on swapping these out back and forth, and quite honestly, I don't really mind the look here with the cabling going, under and back on top right there. That works and looks fine for me. This will just go back in the box. Just to show off the cable, how tough it actually is. I mean, I'm pulling pretty hard on this, and it's not coming out. So, there's definitely a proper way to install it. Just get some pliers and you should be totally fine. Now you can see here I'm using the standard backpack, which is inverted to form the tip of the gun. That's really the way I like to set it up, just because I don't like having extra parts, the actual barrel here sitting on a shelf. So this will actually go back in the box for me, but I'll show this off in a second attached to the tip of the gun here. but I think it looks pretty good for the most part. Again, very Quake Wave in terms of its engineering. Very much feels like a Quake Wave design choice here. One nice thing is that this version does actually have a trigger. Not functional, but it does move back and forth. Has no electronics to actually control the light-up gimmick for the gun. And just to show off the actual more sculpted gun barrel finish, there we go. I think that looks pretty good actually. And you do get the light-up gimmick there as well, which works okay. I mean, it does light up, kind of gives a cool effect to it, but not overly impressive, honestly. I think the official Shockwave, from some of the pictures I've seen, it's a much brighter purple light coming out. So for me, you know, I like the yellow LED for the light, for the eye feature. I really wish it was more of a purple light coming out for the gun barrel, maybe for the chest as well. And just for a quick size comparison, so you can see what kind of scale we're dealing with here. We have Quake Blast with a Masterpiece car. So yeah, a real big beefy gun. Now, a quick note here, you can see I've replaced the other nozzle back with the traditional backpack setup. This is a real pain in the ass to take off. When you put this on, it really locks into place pretty well with these two side tabs. But getting this off is really difficult. In fact, what I ended up having to do was pull out the 4 screws on the bottom here, just so I could split the plastic safely and pull it off the arms here. Another reviewer, Piao, actually broke the nozzle on his Quake Blast trying to pull the other piece off. So I didn't want to risk it. I just unscrewed it, pulled it apart, pulled that sucker off. It was really giving me a hard time. So if you do want to use that piece, just be very careful trying to pry that back off. It's broken on other people's figures already, so just a word of caution right there. In terms of the overall look for the gun, it's really clean. It cleans up nicely. It has a great sort of profile and silhouette here. There are a couple things I don't like. These thigh gaps or thigh panels, it's a little gappy right here. In fact, you might be able to see a little bit of the silver thigh peeking out from behind there, and it's definitely obvious from the top. Basically, it feels like the leg should compress in more, because the angle on this hip skirt lines up perfectly with the angle on the lower leg here, and there's an unnatural gap between the two. So I'm not sure why it was designed like that. It feels like that really should clean up a little bit nicer. Same goes for this top part here. They have some pretty clear sculpted detail, which should line up with the kneecaps, and they're the same size, same width, but again, it has that same sort of quarter-inch gap between those two. It feels like it was thought out and sculpted pretty well, but it just wasn't executed as well as it should have been. I really feel like it's the little details like that which could have been and should have been cleaned up. Other than that, though, I mean, the figure really looks nice. It's a very accurate look and feel to a Masterpiece Shockwave. The only other visual blemish I'd say would be these little white plastic clips, which is visible in both the robot and the alt mode. I don't understand, why the white plastic wasn't painted or addressed in some fashion, or maybe cast in a different colored plastic altogether. This plastic does feel a little bit different. It feels kind of softer, and I think that's intended because this is sort of a robust, stiff joint, and I think they didn't want to risk the chance of this plastic cracking or breaking. But even still, I don't know why they chose the white color there. It just seems a little bit off. Like it could have been executed a little bit better or differently. So I don't know. But other than that, I mean, this looks and feels like what a Masterpiece Shockwave should feel like. I mean, it's a big, beefy, hunkin' piece of plastic and metal and die cast, and it's chock full of light up features, and it just feels great in hand. I mean, this is something that I like quite a bit. Let's get some final thoughts on this figure and talk a little bit more about the Fans Toys and knockoff connection, and see how that all kind of plays together here. Fans Toys has made a claim that it is sort of a knockoff figure. There's been a rumor. I'm not sure if it's any validity to it or not, but supposedly Fans Toys blocked Cloud9 from major retailers selling it, basically claiming that it was a knockoff product of their original QuakeWave design. So I don't want to say with any type of validity that that's an accurate statement or not, but that's kind of the rumor going around. And it's kind of tough to argue that this doesn't borrow quite a bit from the Fans Toys QuakeWave product. Now, I wish I had QuakeWave here to compare Quake Blast 2 directly. It's really hard for me to make any kind of definitive statements without really having experience with both products. But from reviews, videos, everything I've seen of QuakeWave, I think it's pretty fair to say that this figure does borrow probably about 85 to 90% of its sort of underlying engineering, getting from point A to point B in its transformation, down to the outer leg panel design, the way the head folds into the chest, the invertible backpack. There's a lot that this figure seems to borrow from QuakeWave in that regard. Now, does that make this a knockoff product? That's the other question here. And that's, again, another tough statement to really say definitively yes or no. While I do think the engineering is heavily borrowed, everything else from head to toe has been redesigned, down to every single line panel, every single detail sculpted into the actual figure. Even the shoulders, the upper body, the arms, everything has been re-sculpted, and in some cases, proportions are pretty drastically changed. This feels like a much bigger and bulkier figure than what QuakeWave looks like. And they did take some liberties here. They've redesigned the entire lower foot, which I think looks dramatically better on this figure versus QuakeWave. This has a much more natural foot and lower leg design. They even did some additional engineering here with these back panels which rotate to the inner leg. Again, it might be minor, but it's something that QuakeWave didn't have. So there are differences. There are quite a bit in terms of aesthetic changes, but there are some actual physical engineering changes as well. What constitutes a knockoff versus maybe a retooling? It's really a tough call. But I definitely will say that this does feel like more of a retooling to me versus maybe a direct KO. The quality here is phenomenal. All the plastic, the paint, we touched on that already. I love all the subtle detailing. The actual light-up gimmicks, I think, are really well done. I'm not usually a fan of that on most figures, but I think Cloud9 did an excellent job on this. And, aside from maybe some questionable plastic here on the hand, there's really not a lot of negative to say about this figure. And the one real determining factor whether you should buy this figure or not, the price point. This guy's going for, I think, $80 shipped. That's crazy. The quality of this, I think QuakeWave goes for $150, and Masterpiece, the official Masterpiece Shockwave will probably be going for between, I think, $120 to $150, depending on where you order from. So for $80 for a figure of this quality, the materials, the paint, the engineering, again, granted, it might be borrowed, but, this is kind of a killer deal. Would I recommend buying this? You probably have to break it down to a couple categories here. If you have a QuakeWave, unless you're a diehard Shockwave fan, I can't say yes. You're not really getting something that's dramatically or drastically different. If you don't own a Shockwave, like the situation I was in, then absolutely, yeah, pull the trigger on this guy. This is a phenomenal representation of a pretty iconic character. If you are waiting for the official, then you're probably not looking at a third-party figure to begin with. And if you're a diehard Shockwave fan, then you're probably already buying this one already. So, it's going to come down to what you like aesthetically. This is definitely a beefier, deeper, purple sort of look to it. But, it really, it feels like a Masterpiece Shockwave to me. With that being said, guys, I appreciate you watching. Hopefully some more reviews will be coming out shortly, but, yeah, definitely consider picking this guy up. I think he feels phenomenal in hand, and I think you'd be quite satisfied with him on your shelf. Have a great day, guys.